Welcome to another edition of Focus on Alternatives, sponsored by ADISA. I'm Damon Elder, the publisher of the DIWire.com, and I'm joined today by Bill Robbins, CEO of WealthForge, a fintech firm seeking to bring efficiencies to the alternative investment industry. So Bill, what are some of these systemic inefficiencies in the space, and what is being done from a technological perspective to help solve them?
Well, Damon, our vision is to make owning an alternative investment as easy as a mutual fund. So when you compare it to that standard, you can see we have a lot of work to do. Let's get started with just the subscription process. So we're still doing check and app the way we did mutual funds in the 80s. And then once we own the investment and the security, there's no automation or standardization or infrastructure that supports simple corporate actions, transfers, tenders, account changes, address changes. These are all forms-based, paper-based processes. So fintech firms in the industry are bringing automation to the market, and we're making progress towards our goal of making alternative and direct investment securities as easy to own as a mutual fund.
Well, so let's drill down just a bit then. So, for instance, obviously a lot of the folks in the alternative space are sponsors or issuers or distributors of private placements, billions of dollars worth per year. So what is the current process, typical process, to place a subscription for a private placement?
So today it's a completely paper-based subscription process. And starting with the advisor might request a document package from a sponsor. Believe it or not, some sponsors are still overnighting subscription packages to advisors. Advisors or their assistants then fill out the paperwork manually, sometimes literally with pen and paper. Other times they're filling in a fillable form, a PDF, and it still involves placing the documents in front of investors, a stack of paper with sign here notes on it. Once the investor has signed all the documentation, the advisor can sign it. It's often then overnighted to the home office, who does a broker-dealer principal review. It can then be overnighted in some cases to a custodian, and then finally overnighted to the sponsor or to their record keeper, like a transfer agent. So it's a very laborious, paper-intensive manual process, and the problem is it can take a very long time. And quite a few of those manual subscriptions are incorrect the first time around.
So you say it can take a very long time. Give me a worst case scenario, kind of a typical scenario. I mean, if I go online, TD Ameritrade, I can place a stock order in seconds, really. This sounds like it can take days, weeks, sometimes maybe even months.
That's exactly right. It can take weeks, certainly. The average cycle time for many of these private placements, the Reg D example is a good one, can be 3 weeks. And that's if everything goes right the first time. So our vision is to help make alternative investments as easy to own as a mutual fund. And as you say, you can go online as an advisor today and you can enter a mutual fund order in seconds. And so we have a ways to go to get there, but we are working towards straight-through processing for alternative investments.
Well, let's talk about straight-through processing in a second. But first, so it sounds to me with all these laborious steps and all the paperwork and all the fill-ins and whatnot, I think really that leads to what we in the industry know as Nigos, not in good order documentation, which can add a whole other layer to the process. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit and how big of an error or an issue are Nigos in the space and getting an order efficiently processed?
Oh yeah, the dreaded Nigo. It's a huge problem in the industry. We have spoken to a number of sponsors, and typically what we're hearing from sponsors is anywhere between 40 and 60% of their initial subscriptions for new business are not in good order or Nigo the first time they come through. We've spoken to one sponsor who told us that their Nigo rate sometimes approaches 75%. Oh. And so it's a massive problem for the entire industry. It's not limited to one sponsor or to one broker-dealer or to one firm. And just imagine the amount of investor frustration that we create when we have to put this stack of paper in front of them for the second or third time with the initial here and the sign here. And that entire process is just a very inefficient process. It creates a really terrible experience for our investors, who happen to be typically our best clients, our most high net worth accredited investor clients. It makes very inefficient use of our advisors' time, so it impacts productivity. And it's a major industry problem. The good news is that it's on the way out. We are already seeing across the industry, as firms adopt subscription automation technology, you can drive those Nigo rates down from 40, 50% on average to low single digits, 5% and below.
Well, that would probably lead to tremendous cost savings. I mean, you probably have to, on multiple levels of the process, sponsors, issuers, firms, whatever, they probably have to hire special people just to deal with Nigos.
For sure. There are massive cost savings involved in just efficient processing. Only having to process a document once is a major step forward. There are also other benefits. There are sales lift benefits. If you're a sponsor raising capital, you are raising capital more efficiently when you make that process easier for the advisor and more delightful for the investor. And then if we zoom all the way out and just take an industry view, part of the vision of making alternative investments as easy to own as a mutual fund, starting with the subscription, but then going on post-trade, is that we can create a rising tide. We as an industry can create a rising tide that really can lift all boats. Alternative investments should be much more broadly available every time they're suitable to investors than they are today. And the biggest limitation that's in front of us is it's just so hard to do this business today.
Right. And so you'd mentioned earlier straight-through processing, and that's certainly something that we're starting to hear more and more throughout the industry. So why don't you just kind of give us an explanation of what is straight-through processing and what kind of benefit can it bring to the industry?
Sure. So straight-through processing, really let's start with the investor. So what the investor is going to experience is an online process that involves and includes digital electronic signatures. And so instead of getting a stack of forms with sign here stickies, the investor can go through those documents efficiently. For the advisor, it's an order entry process that allows them to move away from a paper-based, form-centric process. We go through an intelligent interview that makes sure that the advisor is providing the required information for the sponsor's subdoc and for their broker-dealer suitability and sales practice review. It allows for routing to all the participants in the process. So, for example, to the broker-dealer's home office, where a principal can review. We have a dashboard so that all the participants in the process can review the status of an investment at all times. For sponsors, it's capital raising efficiency. Making it easier to do business is a major benefit, and of course the operational efficiency that comes from reducing NIGOs.
So, Bill, I know a lot of firms are bringing new technological tools into the space to provide these kind of benefits to the entire process. But with so many competing options out there, how will the industry really coalesce and begin to adopt these? Does there need to be standardization? Can broker-dealers and sponsors and whomever utilize multiple options? Are we going to have to come around one? I mean, what's that process going to look like to really have a significant impact on the way alternative investments are ordered and distributed?
Yeah, so I think the good news is that there are multiple options that are available in the market today. So broker-dealer firms, registered investment advisor firms, sponsor firms, and all of their service providers, which include custodians and transfer agents, fund admins, and other record keepers. There are multiple options that are in the market. They come in several flavors. Some of the solutions that are in the fintech space are being brought forward by asset managers, and so they're providing feeder funds and access to asset classes that traditionally have not been made available to retail investors. Some are approaching the market as pure fintech providers, licensing technology. Others are bringing a marketplace where they're looking to enable marketplace connections between sponsors and advisors. I'm aware of one sponsor that has launched a product offering that is made available to try to help address these issues. So the good news is that there are multiple solutions that are in the market today, and help is on the way. I do think that it's going to require some level of standardization for the industry ultimately to achieve its potential. Our vision and our view is that the fundamental infrastructure that the entire securities industry runs on is the DTCC. And the DTCC has AIP, and AIP has not yet gained widespread adoption. We believe one of the reasons is that there's not an easy and convenient on-ramp into AIP. So when you're still stuck in a paper-based process, really to get your order into AIP, it still requires someone doing manual entry in front of a screen. And so we believe that the AIP from DTCC will ultimately be the common infrastructure, and then this laboratory of capitalism will end up deciding, which of the platforms ultimately, are successful. We've seen this play out in other industries and other asset classes. I think the variable annuity securities market is a great example. 15 years ago, there were 10 fintech providers. Today, there are really 2 that do almost all of the business. There may be 3 that matter. And I think we'll end up seeing the same thing in the fintech space.
Do you think it'll take 15 years?
No, I think it's going to go much more quickly. I think our space is primed. I think we've seen this movie before as an industry, and we know how it ends. And so I think that the network effect is going to kick in, and very quickly, I believe we will see broker-dealer firms start to adopt the technology. When those firms start realizing the sales lift and the productivity benefits for their advisors, the improved investor experience, they are going to request that all of the sponsors that they're partnered with join the platform that they have selected.
It's like most things in this space, it's going to be driven really by the distribution partners, the broker-dealers, the RIAs, who want this efficient process. It makes their lives easier, their clients easier. If they want something, the sponsors will provide it.
That is correct. So I think the distribution partners ultimately will drive that market, but it's important to acknowledge that it is a partnership between those broker-dealer firms and their sponsors. So the sponsors have to be engaged in the process and have to feel good about the partner that the broker-dealer firm is selecting. And so, the good news is there are multiple options that are approaching this market in different ways. And I'm confident that the network effect will kick in quickly. And as broker-dealers start selecting platforms, the sponsors will quickly adopt. Those sponsors will then see how much easier it is to raise capital, and they will encourage the other broker-dealer partners to adopt the technology. So I don't think it will take us 15 years.
Like you said, the power of capitalism seems to speed things along, right? We're all trying to make money efficiently, and these products, these tools, we're certainly going to help facilitate that. So Bill, final question. We've talked so much about the efficiencies that these tools can bring to the marketplace on every layer, but what is the cost of not adopting? What exactly, do we have a way to measure just what it costs the industry as a whole by having this inefficient process that we're currently still laboring under?
Yes. Well, I think we can measure the inefficiency and the operational cost, but I think the bigger deal and really the cost of not adopting technology is going to be more so felt on the sales side of the business. So imagine if you're a financial advisor and your clients are working with another advisor perhaps who has a automated experience that makes it so much easier to own one of these alternative investments, but you or your firm for some reason has not adopted the technology. How does that impact your relationship with your client based on the investor experience? Imagine you're a broker-dealer firm and your competitors have implemented this straight-through processing technology from one of the providers. It's going to be easier for those firms to recruit advisors, high-quality advisors with high-net-worth clients who do this type of business. And if you are slow to adopt or last in line, the opportunity cost there for missing out on providing the best platform available for your advisors is going to be expensive. Imagine that you're a sponsor and you are still requiring your distribution partners to do subscription documents with paper and pen and checks and FedEx. And your competitors make it easy to do business. In fact, they can raise capital and a subscription can be done in minutes, and it's right the first time. And there's a dashboard that provides transparency. You are going to lose out on the ability to raise capital if you're a transfer agent or a custodian who's still manually keying information into their system, and your competitors offer a more efficient process. So I think the opportunity cost is really going to be the big deal, and we will gain from the operational efficiencies that technology provides. But the big picture opportunity really for everybody in the market is if we can make these investments easier to own, starting with the subscription and then moving into the post-trade maintenance and support, we can create a rising tide that will lift all the boats and expand the pie really for the entire industry.
I'd have to imagine that's particularly true given the fact that we're seeing this massive demographic shift and intergenerational transfer of massive wealth from the baby boomers, who are obviously rapidly going into retirement, to their children and their grandchildren, even the people who've grown up in the digital age. I can't imagine they're going to stand for having to fill out all these paper.
I totally agree. So we often ask broker-dealers and sponsors, think about the last subscription that you received. And for that broker-dealer or for the investor, was the experience more like checking out on Amazon.com or was it more like standing in line at the DMV? And for most of them, it still feels, like the old school, very painful process. So the fact is, expectations change. People have adopted technology, and you wake up one day, and you can't imagine doing it the old-fashioned way. And I think we're really close to that moment for alternative investments and our legacy paper-based subscription processing.
Bill, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your insights. Very helpful. I learned a lot. I'm sure our viewers did. And thank you for joining us. For more information on technology impacting the alternative investment space, and for all things regarding alternative investment, please visit adisa.org. Thanks again.